Before we start this episode of Pandemic Chit Chat May 2020, we just want to let all of our listeners know that all of the ideas and opinions expressed in this episode are Ida's and I's. We don't expect anyone to have to go with what we say or what we do. These are just our experiences as two 8th grade girls who are living through a pandemic, and also a lot of social justice and change that happens throughout our world every day. Thank you and enjoy. Hi, I'm Devin.
And I'm Ida.
And welcome to Pandemic Chit Chat,
the podcast where we, two 8th graders, talk about the events of the pandemic through our eyes.
Throughout the past almost year of our lives, Ida and I have been doing school from inside of our home and missing out on many things.
Many 8th graders have shared similar experiences to us, and so we're here sharing a few of them.
This is Pandemic Chit Chat. This episode of Pandemic Chit Chat, we're going to be focused on what's happening in our lives now and basically how last July up till now, when we left school, kind of, and in the middle of summer last year, up till now, we are preparing to leave, but also just wrapping our head around the fact that we were probably not going to go back into the building before we leave the school, and how we're going to manage our mental health going into high school then and now.
Yeah, for sure. And we're starting more of our episodes like this, but there's another disclaimer. These are our opinions, no one else's, and dealing with mental health and these topics, these are all based on our own experiences and no one else's.
Yeah, and some of these topics are really hard to discuss because there's a lot of things that are going on in the world that aren't always great, and so, but we're just, sharing our experiences, sharing our opinions, sharing our story, and that's why we're here. Okay, starting off July 2020. So I have one of the most pivotal moments for me in the pandemic was in July. I have a tradition that I uphold with my family every year where we go on vacation together in the summer. Like I said in the last episode, traditions are very important. So luckily we were all able to safely get tested and safely do it and safely, quarantine before and after to make sure that we were safe. So we went to New Jersey, and I just remember, I wasn't in a great place at that time because after that trip, I knew that, there was 3 weeks of me just doing nothing, and when I don't have anything to fill with my time, I get really upset and stressed and anxious.
Yeah, and July was sort of one of those gap months where we, as, rising 8th graders, didn't have a lot to do. And I also have a tradition where every summer I go up and I see my grandparents. We got tested, we quarantined before and after, but I got sick while we were visiting my grandparents, and so I had to go to the hospital. I had appendicitis. It was great.
Oh my goodness, I didn't know this. We learn something new every day. How is appendicitis? How'd that treat you?
So we caught it early, which was the good thing.
Good that your appendix didn't rupture, I hope.
Good, yes. Except hospitals during the pandemic, even when you don't have COVID, and that specific hospital wasn't taking COVID patients.
It's just still scary though.
Right. And it was so strict, and there were so many rules to prevent the spread, and I had to wait for my surgery for days because they were going through all the procedures to get me COVID safe.
Yeah, that's definitely scary. There's been one incident in my family where we've had to go to a hospital and during the pandemic, and it was very minor, thankfully, but I still remember that it's scary being there because hospitals overflowed during the pandemic, and countless people died in hospital beds without their families having to say bye to them, and that's just really hard to deal with, especially for nurses and doctors who witness it up front.
Right.
So when I was in New Jersey, I had kind of, so I was with my cousins, but on both sides of my family, which was new because we're not all usually together a lot. And I get a lot of social pressure and anxiety. And I'm a very outgoing person, I'm a very extroverted person. But I am only really close with a couple of people. So when I like see my extended family, I just feel a lot of pressure for some reason. I don't know why. So I was there and I just kind of couldn't, because there are older kids and there are younger kids. And at the same time, like you want to be one of the older kids, but you also want to be one of like you
Yeah.
want to like hang out with your younger cousins because they're who I'm closest with. So it's just kind of, it sounds stupid, but it really didn't put me in a good place. And one night I just had like a complete breakdown and I was so upset and I don't even remember why. It's just I had sort of a realization over time that as we're like even distance from people at school, like people at school who I don't even talk to, or people who are just like who are there but you don't really notice them, it's just hard. It's actually kind of hard to be like gone from your regular social scene for so
Yeah.
long. And so I just remember thinking that like everything was my fault and that like every like, everything that was happening was my fault. Obviously like not the pandemic, but just I felt like I shouldn't be allowed to like feel this way. And I get that like everyone has horrible mental health in like the pandemic, but we're going through a pandemic and there's so many worse things in the world. There's so many worse things in the world. So it's hard to feel bad for yourself, kind of. That's how I feel. But I think that over time, I definitely had to learn how to deal with it more. But things were like bad.
I totally see where you're coming from. And for me, it was also a really big challenge to like accept how I was feeling. Um, a lot of times like how you were saying, I wouldn't think that my problems were like worthy enough to be upset over. And that's a big thing that I'm still sort of struggling with because like I'm doing fine in school. I have a good family, I have good friends, but there are still things I'm upset about.
Hmm.
And I know it's really hard for both you and me to realize that even though our lives are mainly pretty good, that we can still have problems and we can still be upset. And yeah,
I think recognizing that's really important. And there are definitely times, because in our whole life, we never expected this to come, but in a really weird way, like we didn't think it was possible almost. And
yeah, yeah,
I lived so many, I don't know why, this is really weird, but every time I think back to normal life, I think of like going to school in elementary school because I don't feel like I established enough of like a time period in my life at Hardy because we were there for such a short time that like it wasn't really something
yeah.
that I like processed. And I was like, oh, you were in middle school for, I'm technically, yes, you're going through the whole 3 years and you're almost done with it, but you were really there for a year and a half, and the rest of it was online, which is just insane because I'm going through every day and it just doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel like school. It's just a routine that I've fallen into and like don't know how or when I'm going to get out.
Yeah, and I definitely see where you're coming from and like your experience. So there was a high school thing yesterday. It was a big meeting, and it did not feel real whatsoever. There was no way I could be like, "Oh my God, class of 2025, it's happening next year." It makes no sense to me because what you were saying, it feels like we've been in middle school for around a year and a half. It doesn't feel like it's been 3 years.
I mean, 2025 feels so far away, but at the same time, it feels so close. And especially the fact that like I don't know, I've just been having this fear recently that we're online and everything is not at its greatest potential that it can be, and obviously that's the case here, but we're going into freshman year next year and I think people kind of like make high school and college honestly sound scarier than it is. Like before, like, oh, SAT prep the minute
Yeah.
you enter the building. But I don't know. I feel like because of this year, I haven't been able to prepare the way I would have liked to, and kind of finished off. Because I don't know, I just feel like high school is like a whole different chapter. Like I feel like middle school and elementary school like don't even come close to like that level of education. And I just feel like my everyday, I don't know, I've always had this fear that everything's going to be so much harder. It's just going to be so
Yes,
harder, and
that is a
the
valid
material
fear.
is going to be horrible, and I'm going to like be crying and have so much homework every single night, and I'm not going to be able to keep up with it. And I don't know, I don't even think that's just a reality. That's just my fears coming into play. But the pandemic has not helped with that, because we are missing out on a lot of opportunities and experiences that we would normally get in 8th grade. So
And this might just be the type of books that I grew up reading, but they make it seem like high school is the end all be all.
yes,
It's I mean, I guess that's what people say when like you peak in high school, but it makes it seem like those 4 years and then even college, so like those 8 years are the highlight
the
of your
best part
child.
of your life,
Right.
Ida. If you don't have the best time of your life's over. I mean, as someone who rapidly watches High School Musical all the
Yeah.
time, it's what I live and breathe on. Um, I don't know. There's just a standard. You're right, though. There's a standard that like everything is held up to, and that like it's supposed to be like, but in reality, it's not.
And like, okay, we've gone to pretty small schools. If
Oh
for
yeah,
people watching, like our elementary school is around 500 kids, our middle school is like 400 kids. Our neighborhood high school, that's like thousands of kids.
that
And
yeah.
I don't know how I'm going to adjust to going from like 20 kids in a class to I don't even know how many kids.
That's a humongous mental change. And what I've been
It is.
trying to wrap my head around is not only is it huge with kids you don't know, but it's huge with kids you do know. Because although we've gone to small schools, we have a big knowledge of kids who are in the district. And you know, I just feel like once we get there, it's like taking everyone minus the kids who are going to private schools, obviously, and plopping them in one school. And it's so big, I'm sure you won't like see your best friends every single day, because
Right. That's my fear. That is
yeah, so
yeah.
you're gonna have to find a new group, because like I'm not gonna have every single class with like my best friend,
Right.
but she has different friends, and then my other friends have different friends, and I have different friends. So it's just that whole social scene scares the crap out of me, and I don't know how. I think at some point in my head I'm making it sound harder than it will be, but at the same point I'm just like, it's gonna be hard.
I feel the same way. And this could just be a universal experience or it's just me, but my friend group shrunk so much during this pandemic. And once again, the odds of me having any classes with one of those like three people I talk to on the daily is so low. And one, I don't want to make new friends. I am not that social scene, not good for me.
We're
But
like the
also,
same.
I don't want to see my friends come up with their own group like without me.
It's hard because there's definitely a fear of people leaving you behind. And there are some people maybe you're fine with being left behind from. But there are
Yep.
some where you've established like a connection, especially over the pandemic, that you don't want to lose once life goes back. After we left school last year, everyone I hung out with, I really only hang out with two people now, because I just lost connection with so many people, and I think that it's really hard to gain that back. And I agree with you, like what finding new friends is what I'm scared of, because I am content with the 6 friends I have, and although it makes me sad sometimes, there are 7 days in the week and I have 6 friends, it works. And so it's definitely going to be a major adjustment.
So another thing with high school fears, which I guess is the topic, is throughout middle school, elementary school, school has not been really difficult for me.
I
And a lot of times I don't like admitting that because I still find it challenging. But the reality is I haven't had to struggle in classes the way some of my friends may be struggling.
we've
And
both
I'm terrified, yeah, that that's all going to change next year.
Yeah, I don't know if that's one thing I'm scared of because we've both been good students our whole lives and we've both been kind of near the top of our class, which I'm very lucky for. I'm very lucky that I have the resources, and the teachers and the schools to actually get the education I do. And going into high school is obviously a huge step, but I don't know if like the step is going to be as hard as we think it will be. I definitely think junior year will be a challenge because it's your most challenging year of education, is what people say. But I just don't think it will be as hard as it's playing out to be. And sometimes I wish, oh, if freshman year could have been online instead of 8th grade, that would have been something easier. But then I just think that I want all 4 years of high school and I don't want to lose what other people lost.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Pandemic Chit Chat. While this might have been a little different than most episodes, we were talking more about our lives right now than around the world or in the past. We really hope that this brought some comfort to people who are going through similar things, and just to know that you're not alone experiencing anxiety about the uncertain future.
Good job. Great
Hey,
outro. I
yeah.
think, okay, hopefully we're going to Northwest High next year.
21 minutes.